The Art Zone now is in the midst of the Alexander Liberman exhibition at the Rockford Art Museum, and this is running in September and October of 1995. And this exhibit is also part of the 1995 Rockford Art Scene. And we're talking with acting curator of exhibitions.
That's right.
All right. This is Scott Snyder with the Rockford Art Museum.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the Liberman exhibit here.
Well, what we have, Liberman, as many Rockford people know him through his sculpture Symbol, which is located in Sinisippi Gardens. This show that we have inside shows other aspects of the artist's career. Within this show, we have 33 years of the artist's work. It's a survey of these years.
What's fascinating here is to see his work in a museum setting, because so many people are just familiar with his work as a large-scale sculptures that are not only in Rockford but throughout the world. What would you say as far as his three-dimensional work as opposed to his two-dimensional work? How do they relate to each other? Because to me, I do not see that relationship.
Well, the broad-based relationship would be that he's an abstract expressionist. You know, his work is abstract. It's not figurative in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, and that's something that I did not see there, but I guess I do now, because I guess you expect the work to kind of look the same. Like, for instance, the colors that he's using here, these bright oranges, or they call it Liberman red, I take it. That's used on most of his sculptural work. Does not appear that often in his two-dimensional work. Can you talk about that as far as color goes?
Well, he uses other colors in his sculptures too. He works with just raw metal material, rusted metal. He works in bronze, aluminum, white, painted metal, and black. So there are other, besides the Liberman red, that he uses. You don't see the colors in his paint. He uses it in sculpture. He talks in the video, the excerpts that you'll see, he talks about how in a space, in a public art space, or in a public sculpture space, you know, downtown or within office buildings, you need a color to break the space, to break the patterns of the buildings, and thus he thought red was an ideal color to invade the space and really make the sculpture stand out as a unique element within a space.
We're going to hear from Mr. Liberman himself from some video that was done of his work and his feelings, right, as an artist. And then why don't you now take us on this tour and point out this, I guess it's sort of a chronological order here to the way the pieces were hung. And before we do that, though, tell me about that. How difficult is it when you get works like this? Obviously, it's up to you to decide where the placement of all the pieces are. How much thought goes into that, and how much is related to some chronological order, or is it have to do with visually appealing? Or?
Well, since we had 33 years of the artist, it seemed, since we wanted to do some didactic information, some written information on the artist, we wanted it easy for the public to take the information about the artist and follow along through the artist's career. So in laying out this show, it just happened that was the best layout. You see stylistic changes as you go on through the years, through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And then he comes back full circle, which I'll show you in a moment, to an image that he is working with early in the 60s.
Okay, let's go look at the work.
Okay. Okay. This piece here is entitled Full Circle. It was done in 1993. And as I mentioned before, this is the beginning and ending, you know, as you walk through the chronological two-dimensional works here in the museum. He returned to the circle, which is an image he used in some of his earlier works, these pieces in the 1960s, here when he was working in a hard edge period. This hard edge abstraction, he was actually quite ahead of his time, and it's noted in some critics' notes that had he stayed in this style, he would be much more famous than he already is. Yeah, I showed you how the hard edge paintings in the circle, that started breaking down. It started expanding. He got more gestural with his paint to the point where he started now working with this V imagery. And he talks about this V, this upward motion, being a spiritual painting. It's elevating the spirit. So that's what the symbol of the V means.
And we see also a lot more color now coming into the works.
A lot more color, a lot more play in the brush stroke. It's very loose and very gestural.
And now over here.
Here, slowly, as you walk through the exhibit, you see the V image break down to the point of being pure abstraction. And these paintings here, this is a piece untitled from the Storm King series, which is done in 1977. This is acrylic on canvas, and there's no representational imagery within this. He looked for the pure art form as the gesture, the brushstroke, the movement as you create the artwork is what he thought was the purest art. And so he experimented for quite a while in this phase. Okay. Following in Liberman's concerns with abstract expressionism, he started working in different materials as well, keeping true to form, very abstract, very loose gestural canvas. But here in this, this is actually a triptych, 3 panels. He incorporated sand into the canvas. Just a very beautiful painting. And we have 3 of these, of this series. He used ground marble and adhered it with plastic or a lacquer to the canvas. And you see this form here slowly turns on to the next series that he worked, which is this gate series. This piece, Gate 3, was done in 1981. Now he's come back into an image, a symbology, personal symbology, to create, an entrance, a penetration into another dimension or a spiritual plane. That he drifted in and out of pure abstraction, and then having some sort of form introduced in his abstract art.
Well, symbol has that aspect of a gateway in a way. The idea of the two. I do see a relationship here between and the symbol. And we're talking roughly the same years now. Are we getting close to the years of?
Yeah, symbol was 78. This is 81. So you see that image, evolving. I don't know if symbol was an inspiration for that. I think a general theme is the purity, bringing art down to its purest elements, form, gesture, line, and seeing the beauty within that form, as almost a spiritual movement, spiritual for the artist to create this, and to give an experience, whether it be a spiritual or emotional, for the audience to see these paintings.
I've always